Hello, welcome to another fabulous episode of My Orgasmic Life. All right, so here I am, yet again in the dungeon. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Gaia Morrissette. For today, you can call me Empress Gaia. That's my evil laugh. Okay, so lately, it's been I would say last month or so has been all things BDSM and kink related. And the reason behind that is because I am launching my exclusive private BDSM monthly program. And near the end of the show, I'll give you details. In the show notes, you can go check it out. And I highly recommend it. So these are the teasers and the tasters. And if you want more, and you actually want to see what happens in the dungeon, join the program. All right, so let's talk about spanking. Spanking. All right, so let's define spanking in the realm of kink. Okay, so I'm going to do some definitions, and then I'm going to briefly talk about it because it's very complex. Okay, so I briefly want to talk about the reasons why people like to be spanked. All right, so spanking is also known as impact play. And impact play is any form of, and this is consensual. Super important that we acknowledge all things that happen in the dungeon or in your play space or are kinky need to be consensual. All right, I talk a lot about consent. Go watch another episode on consent to really dive into that, okay? All right, so consensual impact play is one person is hitting another person. And you're like, well, why would you do that? Why would people do that? And I'm going to get into that in a moment, all right? So there's different types of spanking, all right? So there's spanking with the hand. There is spanking with somebody over the knee with your hand. There is spanking with implements, and implements being things like wooden spoons, which is my favorite. I love that sound. And the sting that it creates. And then you can see behind me, so everybody who's watching, you can see in the dungeon, you can see all of my implements. So I got riding clops and floggers. I got floggers, I got paddles, I got all sorts of, I got whips, I got all sorts of impact play toys, okay? And how to spank is what we're going to cover in my first monthly meeting, my private exclusive BDSM monthly membership program. We're going to go into how to spank, all the different ways to spank. You're going to be able to see me actually spank my female demo dolly. So you'll actually see us in a session, and then you'll get to ask us questions. So for the low price of $47 a month, you can start to actually really drop into what spanking is. But for today's show, I'm not going into how to spank. I'm going into why. Why to spank? And why do people like it? So let's start with, first of all, we need our definitions of we have tops and bottoms, doms and subs. Okay, so tops and doms are the people who are doing the spanking, that are giving the spanking. And our bottoms and our subs and our slaves are the ones who are receiving the spanking. Okay, so they're the spankee. So we got the spanker, which is the person who gives the spanking, and we have the spankee who's receiving the spanking. Or the impact play. Spanking typically also is a lot to do with, whether it's hands or impact play toys on the butt. You can hit people other places, but spanking typically is associated to on the ass. on the booty. So why? Because, you know, if we drop into, so there's a lot of layers to this. So if we drop into the deep layer of like, well, if you were spanked from a punishing standpoint, why, as a child, why would you want to be spanked as an adult? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Except for our sexual arousal responses come from all sorts of different and interesting, and we don't always understand what turns us on and why it turns us on. So one thing is that there's different layers. So there's, like, I would say, I'm going to break them up into a couple of categories. So the first layer of arousal response in receiving spanking would be the sensory side of things. So we have the sensations of the pain and the arousal response to the pain, which, again, I've talked about pain and pleasure in other episodes, so go explore those episodes. So there's the pain, there's the deep sensation that happens when our skin is awakened and the cells are awakened after impact. So there's the sensory of the light touch or a lick or a blow that is epic after the spanking. There's the audio, so there's the sounds, there's all the sensory pieces. So there's the sounds of the, which in itself can be incredibly auditorially arousing. There's the moans, there's all the sensory pieces. And those sensory pieces can be pleasurable for both parties. So the spankee and the spanker. The spanker may get a sexual arousal response from that sound, may get a sexual arousal response from the ah, or the ah, or the sounds that come from the spankee. The stinging of the hand when doing impact, with spanking with your hand, bare hand, can also be an arousal response because it's a sensory experience for the spanker as much as it is for the spankee. These are some of the sensory pieces. Then we drop into, there's a level of, when we talk about arousal response from humiliation, because there can be a humiliation factor of being punished, of being a grown person and being, taken to task by somebody else. Can be humiliation. And arousal response from humiliation, whether we're talking about spanking or verbal humiliation or any other form of humiliation in the framework of consensual kink, by the way, has this has this really interesting and fascinating thing that ends up happening in our brains. So our brains are like, go through a whole series of thoughts and emotions that are often in conflict. And from that internal conflict, like, I shouldn't like this, yet my genitals are betraying me. My genitals say otherwise. I shouldn't be enjoying this. There's something wrong with me, but I am enjoying this. There's, all of these conflicting feelings of arousal and anger and annoyance and shame and all of these conflicting emotions that are happening internally, which is the piece around why people are aroused from a humiliation standpoint. This creates an arousal response in us. So there's another reason why people may enjoy the piece around the humiliation of being spanked. There's the dominance piece, where, you are, your power is, and again, consensual. Your power has been taken away from you and you're being, and you displeased your dom. And so spanking can be used as punishment, which is like you get off on spanking, or punishment, or punishment, which it can be used as a behavioral modification, right? And in the realm of kink and BDSM, this is consensual, so it's all above board. Okay, so we got the humiliation factor, the sensory factor, and then the other piece that is really complex, like incredibly complex, way too complex for me to even dive into, is the whole piece of being turned on about being punished. And that has many, many layers, and that is something that I will go into deeper about what that is, because we have to drop into psychology, we have to drop into the brain, we have to drop into all these places, okay, to fully understand what that's about and how to navigate that and move in that way with that. So, but that's another aspect of why people enjoy it. And then from the person who's the spanker, there is some, can be arousal response. So for example, I am a sexual sadist and I love hitting people. Consensually only though, only consensually. Right? And I do, I really love it. There's something really, really powerful and arousing for me in the fact that, you know, it's societally frowned upon to go around hitting people. You're not supposed to do that. It's like society says, no, you can't do that. Otherwise that's assault, which unless it's consensual, I agree. So there's something to be said about when somebody has given me consent to hit them, whether it's with my hand, a spoon, my riding crop, my floggers, all of my implements. When they dance around and squeal and whine, it just brings me joy. And deep down inside, I don't really know why that brings me so much joy, other than it fulfills my, you know, sexual sadist, my sadist side of me, the darker side of who I am, that I go out in the world and I can't go around hitting people and I can't be violent and I have to be nice, and you know, that's what, you know, is important for a healthy society, and everybody, you know, is taken care of. So yet I still want to go and hit people. It's still internally a part of who I am. So for me, being in the realm of BDSM, I get to do that from a consensual place because the person who's being hit is also enjoying it. They're enjoying it on different levels. So in particular with me and my submissives, a lot of their arousal responses are, one, my laughter of joy, and they're bringing me joy. And that's part of their arousal response, is about hearing my joy is part of their arousal response. And as long as it's in the framework of consent and negotiation and, you know, all of the pieces to set that up so that that's a safe environment and it's not an unhealthy or dysfunctional environment, we're good to go. And their arousal response, you know, comes from, some of them are pain sluts. That's a terminology that, you know, we utilize, and that means that they actually are aroused by the pain. They get off on the pain. And so when they're getting pain and I'm getting glee from giving them pain, then this is like a beautiful exchange of both of our sexual needs being met in that moment. And because it's above board, because there's negotiation, because there's been to have conversations and consent that's in place, this is an incredibly healthy expression of who each individual is on a sexual level. Not to mention that, so then there's this other piece of surrendering into subspace. So impact play, it can be one of the places in which a submissive or a bottom or the spankee can get into a trance state, a Zen space, headspace, where it's meditative, through leaning into the pain and breathing into the pain and leaning into the pain and going into the pain, and the extremes that are happening in our bodies release all these biochemicals, which then can put our brain, with the right combination, can put our brain into an incredibly Zen state. And also a very healthy state for our whole entire body, as if we just went to a yoga class. So there's also health benefits of being able to drop into, is called subspace. This is that space that we're talking about, is called subspace. So being able to drop into subspace is a key piece of, you know, enjoying being on the receiving end of impact play. So as you can see, there's like a lot of reasons why, and and I'm sure there are a bunch of, and there are more reasons beyond the ones that I've just talked about. Those are the major ones. I mean, everybody has their own specific reasons, their own specific sort of pattern with it. So I talked about the sadist side of me, where I'm the spanker. Then there is the spank-y, me being the receiving end of spanking. So with the right person, and a very small selection of people, I love being spanked. I love being spanked. And for me, it's the sensory piece of it. I'm not a pain slut when it comes to my ass being spanked, or being hit. However, when there is enough impact going on our skin and on our bodies, the nerve endings wake up, and those nerve endings, which sends us pleasure through our bodies. And so I enjoy getting spanked so that I can have that moment. So I go through the pain so that I can have the reward on the other end of it. That's, for me, why I enjoy being spanked. And that in itself is kind of a foreplay sort of place. So you can have spank, and the other thing is you can have spanking with sex, or you can have spanking just on its own. And there's different benefits, and there's different reasons why people will, do those things. So spanking on its own can be its own experience, or spanking during intercourse or penetrative sex, or, oral sex, or, sexy time, is also another way in which people can explore spanking. All right. So I think that's all the big ones. That's all the covering of why people do this. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. Consent, consent, consent. If you go around hitting people without consent, it's assault. So if you want to hit people, make sure you have consent to do so. And also find the right person that wants to be spanked for the right reasons that fit why you want to spank them. So it's about finding the right fit is an incredibly important piece of making sure that everybody's sexual gratification is met during a spanking session. And of course, communication, communication, communication. So if you want to learn more about how to spank, like the logistics of how to spank and what it looks like in an actual spanking session, that is going to be this month's membership, BDSM membership session. And so every month, where I'm going to pick a new kink and a new fetish, and we're going to explore it for 2 hours. So the first half an hour will be all about the learning how, the safety protocols, the implements, the how-to make sure you do no harm to yourself or others, both emotionally, physically, and psychologically. That's going to be the first half, or the first half an hour of the session. Then there'll be a play session, which will be about an hour, 45 minutes of me actually doing that kink as if there is just no audience there. So you'll actually be able to see what it actually looks like, what possibilities in a play scene can be, which is the activity that happens. And then you get to ask me and whoever I was demonstrating on and having the play scene with, you get to ask us questions for the last half an hour of our event. And this will happen every month. And the benefits of the membership site or membership program is that you get this blended learning, and it's really hot to watch me, let's be honest, it's really hot to watch me, play with others. And you get to learn while it's happening, and you get to ask questions. And all for the low fee of, until March 1st, by the way, $47 a month. And you'll also get preferred rates on my session, like my my services, as well as preferred rates and discounts on all the vendors that I'm building a network with around toys and implements and furniture and clothing and attire and all those things. So it's amazing. So come join me. And our first session is February 19th, so you don't want to miss out. And I'll put the links in the show notes. And in the meantime, if you're super excited and you're like, oh my God, I need to register now, you can go to empressgaia.com and you'll see the membership site, or you'll see the membership program then. All right, I hope this is helpful. Thanks for hanging out with me. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you February 19th to actually learn how to spank properly. Okay, bye-bye. Mwah.